Welcome to part 2 of problem 10-6. In the previous problem, we worked required parts 1 through 5. In this video, we're going to work 6 and 7 and then 8. 6 asks, what is the rate and efficiency variance for labor? Number 7 asks, what is the variable overhead rate and efficiency variance for variable overhead? And then it says, prepare a standard cost card for one backpack. I've already prepared that on an Excel file. So, basically, we have to fill out the variances for direct labor and overhead. To calculate one of the prior questions, we had already calculated all the variances for direct materials. Well, in this video, or in this problem for direct labor, we can quickly get the spending variance if we wanted to. I don't know if that's really necessary, so we're not. However, we can go ahead and calculate what actual rate times standard rate is. Actual hours times the standard rate. We were given 1,500 as the actual hours. You recall we went ahead and made a note also in the prior video. Then the standard rate, the direct labor rate, is $15. So they're making they're budgeted, or the standard is $15 an hour. $22.50 or $22,500. So $1,500 times $15 is $22,500. Now we can quickly calculate the variances. So the difference between $22,500 and $23,250 is $750. This number's less, the actual number's less than anything with the standard in it. So that means wrong, it's more. Oh, it's more. So 23,250 is more, so that makes it unfavorable. Also, for the efficiency variance, the standard is 21,000 and 22,500 that also has the standard in it, but actual. We're looking at the difference in the actual direct labor hours versus the standard based on 1,000 units, which would be 1,400, right? 1,000 times 1.4 is 1,400. So the standard would be 1,400 hours. They actually took 1,500 hours. So we know it's unfavorable, and when we do the math, we get $1,500. So it's $1,500 unfavorable. So that is the answer to number 6. Number 7 was to calculate the rate and efficiency variance for variable overhead. Well, the actual hours, just like direct labor, is 1,500. And the standard rate is $3 that we had calculated or were given. Wow, we were given. There's so much in this problem is not given, you know. So 1,500 times 3 is $4,500. $4,500 is worse than what the standard is, which is $4,200. So that's $300 unfavorable. Okay. And then the actual variance, the actual compared to the actual based on standard rate, 3,600 is what it actually turned out to be compared to 4,500, and that is $900 favorable. Okay, so those are the answers to 6 and 7. I'm not going to write them down. And number 8, prepare a standard cost for one backpack. Standard cost card, which we will. The good news is, though, we've already calculated the standard cost per unit, or one backpack. And we did that in number 1, okay? Which is pretty cool, right? We already did that. But we didn't do it based on all the information that we now have. And now that we have all the information, we can go ahead and calculate it with a standard cost card. Before I move on to the standard cost card, let's look at the numbers that we'll need. Standard yards, 2.8. Standard hours per unit, direct labor hours, is 1.4. And that would be also the same case for variable overhead. Okay? The standard rate given for variable overhead is $3. We calculated the standard rate in the prior video. Direct labor, 15. And we also were given that the cost per yard, the standard cost per yard is $6. So again, if you haven't watched part one and you're probably thinking, oh, what has happened? You got to go back and watch part one. And I would even encourage you to make sure you work part one very thoroughly before watching part two. So if you've even watched part one, you're like, this is not working very well for me. Punt, try to work the problem on your own, watch the video, come back, all right, and then watch part two. All right, so let's go ahead and assemble everything into a cost card. Naturally, 3 components that we're looking at: direct material, labor, and variable overhead. And just like I showed you, we calculated the standard for direct materials is 2.8 yards, 1.4 hours for each direct labor and variable overhead, which we had to calculate. And again, you know, if you calculate, let's say, direct labor and get 1.4, then it's also 1.4 for variable overhead. It's pretty cool. Can't do that for the dollar amount, but you can for these two. So normally I'm so glad to be able to tell students that we're using direct labor hours as the application rate in these problems, because they'll be the same there like this. All right, and then 6 was given. We had to calculate 15, and 3 was given. So of these 3 numbers, the only one we had to calculate was 15, as you recall. All right, so all that said and done, let's clean this up. 2.8 yards times 6 is 1680. 1.4 times 15 is 21. 1.4 times $3. You know, I really would prefer to have better looking there. 1.4 times 3 is 420. When you add up the standard cost, you get $42. So we had already calculated $42, but when we did that, we were taking the total standard cost and dividing it by 1,000. So one more time, let's review that. So what we did was we took the standard cost, 16,800 divided by 1,000, we got 1680. And we did the same thing for all the other ones. 21,000 divided by 1,000, I erased, is $21. And 4,200 divided by 1,000 is 420. And we got a total of 4,200. That was the very first problem that we were asked. This is the very last one that we're asked. So what are we doing here that's different? We have this information completed. Earlier we didn't. Okay, this is a standard cost card, and this is something that they would have started with to be able to calculate the standard costs. I can't think of anything else we need to cover in this video, but if you have any questions about problem 10-6, please text or email. I'd love to help you. This concludes part 2 of problem 10-16.